Okay, who else had to take that flexibility test way back in the day in PE where you had to reach down and touch your toes and hold it there, and then they measure it? Well, it turns out you can get a lot of information from that little assessment. No measurements needed. It can tell us if we have mobility issues and where they are, all the way from the neck down to the heels. So the test itself is simple. Just film yourself from a profile view in video, reaching down and trying to touch your toes, getting as far as you can and then holding it there just so you know you're not bouncing at the bottom. And then look at your playback, grab the best still image screenshot of that bottom position, and let's look at it together. Couple things to check for right off the bat. If you can keep your knees locked out, palm the floor, or get real close to palming the floor with relative ease, there might be an issue. Also, if you can not really get too deep into your forward fold and your hands end up kind of somewhere near your knees, then it's also a reason to dig deeper into what exactly is limiting your movement. All right, I'm going to give you 2 drills to try. One for those of you who had trouble getting very deep into your forward fold. The other for those of you who had no problem stretching all the way to the bottom and palming the floor. All right, let's start with the former. If you have trouble folding very far into your forward fold, so let's say you were somewhere here and feeling stuck, it's a sign that your pelvis bones, they move independently, themselves may have a limited mobility to any kind of hinging movement. A lot of times this can show up in life with just a achy back, tight back, back getting thrown out, back pain. So if we increase the ability for the pelvis to do that job, it's going to decrease the likelihood that your back is taking that workload. So let's try this drill together. Find a wall, face it, get your feet about hip width apart, plant your hands firmly into the wall, sit back into your hinge. So that means when you look down, your knee is over your ankle, and B, you can support yourself without even hanging onto the wall. So I have a light lean into the wall, so I feel some pressure, and I can kind of feel like I'm wedging my feet to my hands into this space. So I feel some pressure, and I'm creating some tension. Take a big breath in, and then blow all your air out. Feel those ribs come in. Feel your belly brace at the bottom of your exhale. Keep that tension. And I want you to just rock your weight back into your heels, lifting the balls of your feet off the ground, pushing through the wall. And then this is the most important part. You're going to drive your heels down and away from each other as you push away. So you're pushing into the floor and then apart. Rock forward, take a moment to reset, and then drive back, pushing the wall away, driving your heels down and away from each other. You should be feeling a little bit of opening in the posterior pelvic outlet. That means you should feel your sits bones kind of spreading apart a little bit. This second one is for those of you who had no trouble keeping the knees locked and getting really close to palming the floor or getting the fingers on the floor with the knees locked. It shows a really big angle in the hips, and it shows that the hamstrings are overstretched, and probably you may be living in a slightly anterior pelvic tilt, or maybe anterior pelvic tilt and hips push forward a bit. So what we want to do is get the hamstrings to shorten and get more active at pulling the pelvis under you and pulling your hips back in space so that you are not always searching for that tension. Okay, a yoga block or some other elevated surface like a couple of books is a nice way to set up. Put your heels on those objects. Scoot down to the floor so you have about a 90-degree angle in your knee. So you may have to adjust forward or back to do that. Driving the heels into the block so the toes are up. We're just going to start with a nice inhale and then exhale all the way. I don't want you to feel like you're rounding into the floor here. Go ahead and just let the ribs come in and let the belly brace up a bit. Keep some gentle tension. Arms are reaching up at 45 degrees. And then go ahead and pull your heels into the floor and let the back come up toward the knees until your butt floats off the ground just a little bit. That's it. We're there. Squeeze your knees
inward just a little bit if they're flip-flopping out. So I want you to see that they're in line with your hips and ankles. And then we're reaching and breathing. 5 to 10 breaths here can make a huge difference if you hit it regularly.
One more great way to use this information is to take a look at your spine and the shape of that spine in your forward fold. If you notice there's flatter parts and rounder parts, that might mean that the flatter parts have more limited mobility than the rounded parts. Keeping in mind that the thoracic spine will typically be able to round more than the lumbar spine because it is a mobile set of joints in comparison. If you notice you have some limited mobility in the thoracic or lumbar spine, it will be helpful to do some spinal segmenting drills or some rotational CARS drills in that local area or the whole spine. And you'll notice your forward fold may change over time to a more uniform roundness, and it will translate into more mobility and availability of usable space in your day-to-day activities as well. All right, now that you know how valuable that forward fold assessment is, ping me any questions you have after you try it. And note that I've added a couple links to some spinal segmenting and spinal CARS drills that you can do on your own. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click the like and share buttons. As always, more information also sits below about my programs and my online coaching